Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling the history of writing. You know those squiggly lines that make up like words and sentences, everything we read. To guide us on this journey, we've got some fascinating excerpts from Wikipedia's History of Writing, of course, an article by Denise Schmidt-Besserat called The Evolution of Writing, and some really cool stuff from the World History Encyclopedia's entry on, well, writing. Now, you might be thinking, writing, that's pretty basic, right? But get this, writing wasn't like some one-time invention. It actually popped up independently all over the world.
It's almost like this urge to communicate, to like go beyond just speaking and leave a lasting record. You know, it was bubbling up in all these different cultures, almost like a biological imperative.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So before we get to like alphabets and, all those ancient scrolls, our sources talk about this thing called proto-writing. Things like the Jiahu symbols, which are like etched onto tortoise shells in China, or the Vinca symbols from southeastern Europe. But these weren't quite like full-blown writing systems, were they?
Think of them like early cave paintings, they convey meaning, they're telling a story, but they don't have this strict system for representing language like true writing does, but they were like these crucial steps towards the development of writing as we know it.
So we're talking about early humans just experimenting with all these different ways to capture and communicate ideas. I mean, shoot, we use emojis all the time now. Would that make us like proto-writers in a way?
In a sense, yeah. We're always searching for new ways to express ourselves. So like go beyond just words, add some nuance. And those early humans with their symbols and markings, they were doing the same thing, paving the way for like these complex writing systems that would follow.
That's amazing. So when did we start seeing like true writing emerge?
Our sources point to the Bronze Age. That's when things get really interesting. We see writing just like explode onto the scene in 4 different locations: Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and Mesoamerica. Each with its own like unique flavor, its own visual style, its own journey from simple markings to these sophisticated scripts.
Wow. Okay. Let's dive into Mesopotamia first. Home of the Sumerians.
Right.
And those iconic wedge-shaped markings on clay tablets, cuneiform. What were they writing about on those tablets?
Oh, everything. From epic poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh. Imagine like a hero battling mythical beasts, all recorded on these clay tablets. And the Toad, it wasn't just about laying down the law. It reveals like a whole social structure, a hierarchy. Punishments would vary depending on like the social status of the victim and the offender. It's like a glimpse into their worldview frozen in time.
It's like we could like peek into their society through these tablets. And those wedges, they hold more than just words. They hold like a whole culture. But how did cuneiform even evolve? It seems so complex.
You know how we use emojis to represent like objects or feelings? Well, imagine that. But with clay, they started with these little clay tokens, each one representing a specific commodity, like grain or sheep. It was their way of keeping track, like an ancient accounting system, going back as far as 8000 BC.
So they were crunching numbers even before they were crafting poems.
Exactly. Over time, these tokens became more abstract, and instead of carrying around like a pocket full of clay, they started impressing their shapes onto tablets. And eventually, those impressions evolved into those wedge-shaped signs we know as cuneiform, representing syllables and even whole words. It's this fascinating journey from concrete objects to abstract symbols.
It's amazing how they went from like little clay figurines to a whole writing system.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the deserts of Mesopotamia, let's journey to the Nile River Valley, where the Egyptians were busy developing their own spectacular script, hieroglyphs, those intricate picture-like symbols you see on like tombs and temples. They're almost like works of art themselves. Were they like inspired by the Mesopotamians?
Well, some theories suggest Sumerian influence, but the evidence really points to hieroglyphs developing independently. The symbols themselves, the structure of the writing, it all screams like independent invention. It's like 2 chefs in different kitchens coming up with their own unique recipes for the same dish.
So no copycats here, just pure creative brilliance. But I do remember reading that the choice of writing material played a role in how writing evolved. Papyrus, those paper-like sheets made from reeds, became super popular in Egypt. Did that have an impact?
Absolutely. Papyrus was much lighter, more portable than those clunky clay tablets. Imagine you're a scribe. Wouldn't you prefer a lightweight scroll to lug around? This made writing more accessible, not just for priests and nobles, but for a wider range of people.
It's like papyrus was their printing press moment.
Yeah.
So we've got these 2 incredible writing systems, each with its own unique flavor, flourishing in the ancient world. But there's this major twist in our story, right? the birth of the alphabet.
Oh, and what a game changer it was. It wasn't kings or priests who sparked this revolution. It was workers in the Sinai Peninsula, probably Semitic-speaking people. They looked at those, elegant cursive symbols used by Egyptian priests and thought, why not simplify things? They took those symbols, stripped away the visual complexity, and assigned them sound values, like individual letters.
Hold on. They essentially hacked the Egyptian script and created the building blocks for almost every alphabet we use today. That's like next-level ingenuity.
Talk about a legacy. They created a system where anyone could learn to read and write, regardless of their artistic ability. It was the democratization of writing way before the printing press.
From these resourceful workers, this ingenious script starts to spread, right? Yeah. What happens next in our alphabetic adventure?
Well, the Greeks enter the picture. They take this early alphabet brought to them by the Phoenicians, and they do something crucial. They add vowels. Suddenly, writing becomes even clearer, easier to understand, paving the way for the precision and fluidity we see in languages like Greek, and later, Latin.
So vowels, the unsung heroes of the alphabet. And what about Latin? How did it become so widespread?
With the rise of the Roman Empire, the Latin alphabet became the official script for administration, law, and eventually literature. But here's the irony. A writing system born from conquest became the vehicle for recording and spreading knowledge, culture, and philosophy throughout Europe. It's like the Romans conquered with swords, but their legacy was ultimately shaped by the pen.
That's incredible. The very act of writing, meant to document military victories, ended up transmitting ideas that would shape Western civilization. From Mesopotamia to Egypt, and then across Europe. It's been quite a journey so far. But before we jump into the wider impact of writing, I want to circle back to Denise Schmapp-Besserat and her theory about the evolution of writing.
Oh yeah, she proposes this fascinating idea that writing didn't just pop into existence fully formed. It went through this gradual process of abstraction, starting with those early concrete tokens, then impressions on clay, and finally evolving into abstract symbols representing sounds.
So it's like a journey from tangible objects to abstract representations of language. A bit like how children's drawings start out as scribbles and then slowly become more recognizable forms. But why was this abstraction so important?
It allowed writing to break free from just recording transactions or lists. It unlocked the potential to express abstract ideas, emotions, to tell complex stories. Imagine trying to convey the feeling of love or the concept of justice using only pictures of objects. Phonetic writing, with its abstract symbols, allowed for a whole new level of nuance and expression.
So it's like they went from writing shopping lists to composing sonnets. This must have been like a huge game changer for literature.
Imagine trying to capture the nuances of love, loss, or like the human condition using only symbols for objects. Phonetic writing unlocked a whole new realm of creative expression. It allowed writers to explore the depths of human experience in ways never before possible.
And these literary traditions weren't limited to just Mesopotamia and Egypt, right? Our sources mention the development of vibrant literary cultures in ancient India and Mesoamerica, each with its own unique forms and expressions.
In India, the Brahmin caste played a crucial role in, preserving and transmitting knowledge. Through sacred texts like the Vedas, these texts formed the foundation of their religious beliefs, philosophical ideas, even scientific understanding. It's incredible how writing became the vessel for their entire worldview.
And in Mesoamerica, the Maya, with their intricate hieroglyphic system, recorded their history, rituals, and astronomical observations. It's like each of these cultures used writing to connect with their past, present, and future, creating this thread of continuity across generations.
Writing became a tool for shaping cultural memory, transmitting values and beliefs, and fostering a shared sense of identity. It wasn't just about recording information. It was about shaping the very fabric of their societies.
So we've seen how writing transformed commerce, law, and even the way knowledge and culture were transmitted. But there's one more revolution we need to talk about, a moment that truly democratized access to knowledge: the printing press.
Ah, yes, Gutenberg's printing press, a technological leap that would forever alter the landscape of writing and knowledge dissemination. Imagine a world where books were painstakingly copied by hand, available only to a privileged few. The printing press shattered that exclusivity.
It's like the printing press took those ancient scrolls and tablets and turned them into mass-produced paperbacks, suddenly making knowledge accessible to a much wider audience.
Precisely. Books became cheaper, more widely available, fueling a surge in literacy and sparking a renaissance of ideas. It wasn't just about access to information, it was about who controlled that information. Our sources mention how the printing press shifted the centers of knowledge production, from monasteries and universities to publishing houses.
So instead of knowledge being controlled by a select few, it was suddenly out there in the marketplace, open to debate and interpretation. That must have been like a radical shift.
It was a catalyst for intellectual freedom. New voices emerged, challenging traditional authorities and offering alternative perspectives. It paved the way for the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, periods of unprecedented intellectual ferment that reshaped our understanding of the world.
From those early clay tokens to the printing press, it's clear that the history of writing is a story of innovation, adaptation, and the relentless human drive to communicate and share knowledge. But we focus so much on, the external impact, the societal shifts. What about the internal impact? Did writing change the way we think?
That's a fascinating question, and one that scholars have been grappling with for decades.
All right, so let's unpack the impact of writing. And let's start with something we all deal with on, a daily basis. Commerce. I mean, think about those early Mesopotamian tokens. They weren't just cute little clay figures. They were the seeds of accounting and financial systems.
It really is mind-boggling when you think about it. Those simple tokens, representing stuff like grain or livestock, they evolved into these intricate systems for managing wealth and trade across vast empires.
Our sources mention how, written contracts and agreements, they became essential for international trade. Suddenly, merchants could track goods, negotiate prices, and build trust across continents, all thanks to these written records.
Imagine, the Silk Road. This network of trade routes spanning from China to Europe, merchants from different cultures speaking different languages, they could conduct business all thanks to the power of writing. It facilitated this level of economic exchange. That would have been impossible without it.
From bustling marketplaces to the halls of power, writing's influence is undeniable. And when it comes to law and governance, we can't ignore the Code of Hammurabi. Those imposing stone stelae, inscribed with laws, they paint this vivid picture of ancient Babylon.
The Code of Hammurabi, it wasn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It established a social order, outlining rights and responsibilities for different classes of people. It gave permanence to legal traditions that were previously passed down orally, subject to change and interpretation. Writing, in a sense, solidified the rule of law.
It's fascinating how those inscribed laws weren't hidden away in some, royal vault. They were public, meant for everyone to see. Writing created this level of transparency and accountability that was groundbreaking for its time.
Absolutely. In ancient Egypt, we see a similar emphasis on legal documentation. Decrees from the pharaoh, contracts between individuals, even wills. They all relied on writing to establish authority and ensure social order. It's like writing became the backbone of their legal system.
So from commerce to law, writing's impact is clear. But it doesn't stop there, right?
Yeah.
What about the world of knowledge, stories, and culture? How did writing shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us?
This is where things get really, really interesting. Writing didn't just record transactions and laws. It gave birth to literature, to the preservation and transmission of knowledge across generations. Think about those epic poems of Mesopotamia, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. They weren't just entertaining stories. They provided insights into their beliefs, their values, their understanding of the cosmos.
And these weren't static text, right? Scribes would copy and recopy them, adding commentaries and interpretations along the way. It's like an ancient form of collaborative writing. Each generation adding their own layer of understanding.
Exactly. It was this dynamic process, a conversation across time. And as Dinesh Shmut-Besserat pointed out, the shift towards phonetic writing, representing sounds rather than just objects, it was a huge turning point. It allowed for the expression of abstract ideas, emotions, complex narratives.
It's like they went from writing shopping lists to composing sonnets. This must have been a huge game changer for literature.
Imagine trying to capture the nuances of love, loss, or the human condition, using only symbols for objects. Phonetic writing unlocked this whole new realm of creative expression. It allowed writers to explore the depths of human experience in ways never before possible.
And these literary traditions weren't limited to just Mesopotamia, Egypt. Our sources mentioned the development of vibrant literary cultures in ancient India and Mesoamerica, each with its own unique forms and expressions.
In India, the Brahmin caste played a crucial role in preserving and transmitting knowledge. Through sacred texts like the Vedas, these texts, they formed the foundation of their religious beliefs, their philosophical ideas, even their scientific understanding. It's incredible how writing became the vessel for their entire worldview.
And in Mesoamerica, The Maya, with their intricate hieroglyphic system, they recorded their history, their rituals, their astronomical observations. It's like each of these cultures used writing to connect with their past, their present, and their future, creating this thread of continuity across generations.
Writing became this tool for shaping cultural memory, transmitting values and beliefs, and fostering a shared sense of identity. It wasn't just about recording information, it was about shaping the very fabric of their societies.
So we've seen how writing transformed commerce, law, and even the way knowledge and culture were transmitted. But before we jump into the really huge impact of writing on the way we think, there's one more revolution we need to talk about. A moment that truly democratized access to knowledge. The printing press.
Oh, yes. Gutenberg's printing press. A technological leap that would forever alter the landscape of writing and knowledge dissemination. Imagine a world where books were painstakingly copied by hand, available only to a privileged few. The printing press. It just shattered that exclusivity.
Just like the printing press took those ancient scrolls and tablets and turned them into mass-produced paperbacks, suddenly making knowledge accessible to a much wider audience.
Precisely. Books became cheaper, more widely available, fueling this surge in literacy, and sparking a renaissance of ideas. It wasn't just about access to information. It was about who controlled that information. Our sources mention how the printing press shifted the centers of knowledge production, from monasteries and universities to publishing houses.
So instead of knowledge being controlled by a select few, it was suddenly out there in the marketplace, open to debate and interpretation. That must have been a radical shift.
Oh, it was. It was a catalyst for intellectual freedom. New voices emerged, challenging traditional authorities, and offering alternative perspectives. It paved the way for the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, periods of unprecedented intellectual ferment that reshaped our understanding of the world.
So from those early clay tokens to the printing press, it's clear that the history of writing is a story of innovation, adaptation, and the relentless human drive to communicate and share knowledge. But we've focused so much on the external impact, the societal shifts. What about the internal impact? Did writing change the way we think?
That is a fascinating question, and one that scholars have been grappling with for decades.
It sounds like the journey of writing goes even deeper than just, changing society. It goes into the very structure of our thoughts. Our sources kind of hint that writing didn't just change how we communicate.
Yeah.
It actually transformed how we think.
Yeah, that's a really profound insight, and one that scholars like Walter Ong and Jack Goody, they've explored this in depth. They argue that writing, especially like the development of alphabetic systems, led to this shift from an oral mindset to a more literate one.
So it's not just about putting words on paper. It's about rewiring our brains. Could you tell me more about this oral versus literate mindset?
Okay, so imagine a world without writing. Knowledge is passed down through stories, songs, and rituals, relying heavily on memory and repetition. It's a world where communication is immediate, dynamic, and rooted in the present moment.
It's like those epic poems we talked about earlier, right? Shared and reshaped through generations of storytellers. But how does that differ from a literate mindset?
Well, with writing, we can detach from the immediacy of speech. We can record our thoughts, analyze them, and build upon them in a more structured way. Ong argued that this shift towards literacy fostered critical thinking, objectivity, and the ability to think in more abstract and complex terms.
So it's like writing gave us the tools to step back from the flow of conversation and analyze information in a more systematic and logical way. I can see how that would have huge implications for development of philosophy, science, and even organized religion.
Exactly. Jack Goody's work builds on this idea, suggesting that writing led to practices like categorization, list-making, and the development of abstract systems of thought. It allowed us to organize information, compare and contrast ideas, and build complex arguments, all of which are essential for the advancement of knowledge.
But hold on, our sources also mention this study by Scribner and Cole that challenges this idea of a universal literacy effect. They found that learning to write didn't automatically lead to these cognitive shifts in all cultures. So what's going on there?
Scribner and Cole's work with the Vai people of West Africa. It's really fascinating. They found that the cognitive effects of literacy, they depended on how writing was used within a specific cultural context. For the Vai, learning English for practical purposes had different effects than learning Arabic for religious study.
So it's not just about learning to read and write. It's about how writing is integrated into the social fabric of a culture, how it's used, and what purpose it serves.
Precisely. Their research reminds us that writing is a tool, a very powerful one, but its impact ultimately depends on how we choose to wield it.
We've covered so much ground today, from those humble clay tokens to the printing press, from the bustling marketplaces of ancient cities to the quiet solitude of a writer's desk. It's clear that writing has been this, transformative force in human history, shaping civilizations, governments, and even the way we think.
It's given us the ability to record our past, share our stories, and build upon the knowledge of previous generations. It's hard to imagine the world without it.
I know. But here's a final thought for you all to ponder. If writing had never emerged, how would our understanding of history, science, and even ourselves be different? What alternative paths might human civilization have taken?
That's a question worth pondering, and I hope our listeners will continue to explore this fascinating world of writing and its impact on humanity.
Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Through the history of writing, we encourage you to dig deeper, explore those sources we mentioned, and most importantly, keep those mental gears turning. Until next time, happy writing and even happier reading.